So just recently, the Los Angeles Clippers got Paul George back. And after coming back from an injury that kept him out for like 3 months, most people would have assumed that Paul George would need at least like 5 to 10 games to get back to his usual self because he was gone for 3 months. But Paul George has returned and he's looked exactly the same as he had before his injury. And if you ask me, that brings up the question of whether or not the Clippers can actually make a deep playoff run. Because at the making of this video, the Clippers are the 8th seed. It doesn't look like they're going to go up in the standings, and it doesn't look like they're going to go down. So in today's video, I'm just going to be talking about how I think the Clippers rest of the season will go and how far I think they'll go in the playoffs and against certain matchups, how well they will do. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to go over 3,000 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. First, we have to talk about the NBA play-in tournament, which is something the Clippers will definitely be in. It's like 99% sure that the Clippers will be the 8th seed unless like they win every game and then the Timberwolves lose every game. And they're like 6 games behind Minnesota for the 6th seed, and they're more than 5 games ahead of the Pelicans for the 8th seed. And in the play-in tournament, the way it's going to work is the 7th seed is going to verse the 8th seed in a game matchup. And then whoever loses in that 7v8 matchup is going to verse whoever wins between the Spurs or Pelicans. To be honest, I don't think the Lakers are making the playoffs. Then they have to beat either the Spurs or the Pelicans to make the 8th seed. If I'm being honest, I think the Clippers are definitely capable of beating Minnesota in a play-in tournament game. The Clippers have way more experience. They have way more guys who have played in games of this magnitude, whereas the Wolves are a way younger team who have like most of their top players with like no playoff experience, are like very little. So if I'm being honest, I might give the Clippers the edge in a game like that. Also, I just feel like the Clippers are a better team when they have Paul George. But let's say they were to lose that game and they were to verse either the Spurs or the Pelicans, I'm like 99% sure they'll beat the Spurs or the Pelicans because neither of those teams are actually good. They're far out of the playoffs. They're far below 500. Clippers are way better than them. So basically what my point is that the Clippers are for sure going to be the 7th or 8th seed, and I don't have any serious worries about them in the play-in tournament. Obviously, the play-in tournament is just one game. Crazy stuff can go wrong, but in general, I'm not that worried. The Eastern Conference playing tournament is going to be way more interesting than the Western Conference playing tournament. So let's say the Clippers lose their game to the Timberwolves in the play-in tournament, but they beat either the Spurs or the Pelicans in the second one, meaning that they're the 8th seed. The Phoenix Suns have already secured the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, meaning the Clippers would have to face the Phoenix Suns. If I'm being honest, I don't think that's a matchup the Clippers should want. And I don't say that because I think the Clippers will just get straight up swept and embarrassed. But the only reason I would say they don't get swept is because last year in the playoffs with a similar roster, besides like Patrick Beverley now being gone, the Clippers were able to force it to 6 games. And in game 2, if Paul George like hits some free throws and DeAndre Ayton doesn't get an all-time great dunk, the Clippers possibly win that series. But right now, the Phoenix Suns are definitely better than they were last season. They're the best team in the league, if like you ask me. They're not a team I think you want to face at all. There's too much shooting, too much scoring, too much facilitators, too much of just a great system, and their defense is absolutely locked down. That's something that I really think can disrupt the Clippers, who are one of the worst offenses in the league. And yes, I know they haven't had Paul George, but even with Paul George coming back, I still think they'd be below average. The Phoenix Suns defense would really give him trouble because they have lots of guys to throw at him, such as Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges. I think Mikal Bridges can do as good of a job as anyone in the league guarding Paul George. I think he's top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting right now. I don't think that's something you want Paul George to like go through, especially coming off of an injury. So to be honest, if the Clippers were ever to face the Phoenix Suns in the first round, I predict the Phoenix Suns to win in 5 or 6 games. I could see there being some close games, but overall, Phoenix is just by far the better team. If Kawhi Leonard came back, then you could talk to me. But right now, my answer would be the Clippers losing in 5 or 6 games to the Phoenix Suns. In my opinion, I don't think they even have a real chance, so I think they should really try to not get the 8th seed. So now I want to talk about the scenario where I think the Clippers can like actually go far. In this scenario, the Clippers beat the Timberwolves in the play-in game, so now they're the 7th seed, meaning they'd have to verse the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round. And I think this is actually a matchup I think the Clippers would want to get, because first of all, the Phoenix Suns are just a way better team than the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Phoenix Suns are a team that would for sure beat the Clippers. But at least against the Grizzlies, the Clippers would have a legitimate chance to win, because even though the Grizzlies are like the 2nd seed and the Clippers are the 7th seed in this scenario, you have to realize that the Clippers are missing Paul George for most of the year. If they have Paul George, I think the Clippers are for sure a top 5 seed in the Western Conference, meaning this isn't your usual 2v7 matchup. The Clippers have a lot of length to try and disrupt Ja Morant. Lots of defenders will throw at him, and in my opinion, the Grizzlies don't have any one-on-one defenders who can even somewhat slow down Paul George. Dillon Brooks is a solid defender because he tries so hard, but I don't think he's gonna like mess up Paul George at all. Not saying the Grizzlies aren't good defense overall, so that could give them problems, but one-on-one, no one's really locking down Paul George. And I'm not here to disrespect the Grizzlies and say I think the Clippers will win in a series like this, but I think a series like this would definitely go to 7 games. Also, the Grizzlies are a younger team, meaning they have way less experience, which is something that definitely matters in the playoffs. This is also the first time we've seen the Grizzlies be a really good team going into the playoffs, so we don't know whether or not they're a team like the Utah Jazz, who are always folding and disappointing in the playoffs, or if they're a team like the Phoenix Suns, or who are legit and go deep in the playoffs. We're gonna have to see, but at least like they don't have to verse the Phoenix Suns, because we know the Phoenix Suns are legit because of what we've seen last year. The Clippers are one of the most experienced teams in the league, so overall I really think the Clippers could very well complete this upset and go further in the playoffs and make some type of noise. But at the end of the day, I think the Grizzlies are the deeper and just straight up better team, and they've shown to be the better team over the regular season, so I'm not going to disrespect them and say I predict the Clippers to win. But I would say if Kawhi Leonard ever came back and he was like close to like what he is, I think the Clippers win that series, but that's looking really unlikely. But to conclude the video, the Clippers definitely look like a legit threat in the playoffs. I think they have potential to go really far because they have really good chemistry. They have really good defense, like when they're fully healthy, and their offense isn't that good, but getting Paul George should help that. To be honest, I don't really see them getting out the first round without Kawhi Leonard, but regardless, I don't see them like getting embarrassed and getting swept like a usual 7 or 8 seed would. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you think the Clippers are going to go far. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to go 3,000 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro.